Welcome to the Spelling Bee Ninja podcast, your go-to source for engaging educational content. Join us as we explore fascinating topics from a variety of subjects. Today, we venture into the realm of philosophy, specifically examining moral relativism. We value the importance of learning and critical thinking in our community, so make sure to subscribe to our channel for more enlightening discussions and insights. Let's dive into the question: are ethics universal or relative? Moral relativism is a philosophy suggesting that moral values and judgments are not absolute truths but depend on cultural, societal, or individual perspectives. In this view, right and wrong are not universally applicable. Instead, what is deemed ethical or unethical varies across different contexts. This raises essential questions. Are there moral principles that should apply to everyone, regardless of where they come from? Or do all ethical standards exist solely within their cultural backgrounds? To understand moral relativism, it's helpful to contrast it with moral absolutism. The absolutist view holds that there are universal moral truths applicable to all human beings. These principles remain constant, regardless of cultural differences. For instance, most cultures agree on the wrongness of murder or torture. This long-standing debate between relativism and absolutism features prominently in the history of philosophy and remains relevant today. Within the broader concept of moral relativism, we find two specific types: descriptive relativism and normative relativism. Descriptive relativism observes that different cultures maintain varying moral beliefs and practices. This observation is non-controversial, it's simply a fact supported by anthropological evidence. On the flip side, normative relativism makes the philosophical claim that moral judgments are relative to the culture or individual and that an objective standard to evaluate these differing moral systems does not exist. These distinctions matter because many people mistakenly equate descriptive with normative relativism. Simply noting that cultures differ in their moral views does not imply that all these views are equally valid. This misunderstanding is common and leads to profound discussions about ethics. Cultural relativism, which is the most widely recognized form of moral relativism, goes one step further. It posits that moral standards stem from the culture in which one resides. Thus, an action considered right in one society may be seen as wrong in another. Cultural relativism encourages an appreciation of differing traditions, emphasizing the significance of understanding a culture's practices from within. Franz Boas, an influential anthropologist, championed cultural relativism, stressing that each culture merits examination without imposing an external moral framework. However, this concept draws criticism. Some argue that cultural relativism can excuse harmful practices, such as female genital mutilation or systematic human rights abuses. This tension is significant, especially in international discussions surrounding human rights, as cultural relativism poses challenges in advocating for universal standards. Moreover, moral relativism is often bolstered by various arguments. One compelling argument, the argument from diversity, points to the wide range of moral beliefs across different cultures, suggesting that morality is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. Meanwhile, the argument from tolerance claims that relativism fosters respect and understanding between cultures. Additionally, the argument from cultural context holds that moral codes derive their meaning from the cultural surroundings in which they exist. Despite their appeal, critics of moral relativism find flaws in these arguments. For instance, the argument from diversity, though popular, may not withstand scrutiny. Simply because cultures have differing moral beliefs does not logically lead to the conclusion that no objective moral truth exists. A comparison can be made with scientific understanding. Just because the ancient Greeks believed the earth was flat doesn't negate the objective fact that the earth is spherical. Likewise, diverse moral beliefs alone do not imply the absence of universal moral truths. The argument from tolerance encounters its share of challenges as well. If relativism is genuinely true, then what does it mean for tolerance itself? It may merely represent a cultural opinion rather than a universally agreed upon principle, leading to complex dilemmas regarding ethical standards. Importantly, there are robust objections to moral relativism. One prominent critique is the internal critique, which suggests that moral relativism is self-refuting. If moral judgments are indeed relative, then the assertion that all moral claims are relative must also be considered relative. This creates a paradox. If relativism is true only within certain cultures, its embrace threatens the entire relativist outlook. Another strong objection arises from the concept of moral progress. If no objective standard exists to gauge improvement, how can societies claim to evolve ethically over time? Furthermore, many moral values, like those against murder and torture, persist across cultures, hinting at a possible foundation for universal principles. Alongside these challenges, the implications of moral relativism extend deeply into topics such as human rights. If morality depends solely on cultural determinations, the claim for universal human rights becomes precarious, potentially invalidated by conflicting cultural norms. This dilemma highlights the arguments from human rights advocates who assert that universal moral principles must apply to everyone, transcending cultural boundaries. An essential document in this context is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, established in 1948. It articulates that all individuals possess inherent dignity and rights, regardless of cultural differences, reinforcing the notion of universality in moral considerations. Critics argue that an adherence to moral relativism risks justifying oppressive regimes and acts of cruelty. Yet, some relativists propose that human rights can be adapted within their cultural contexts while maintaining core ethical principles. We find ourselves at a crossroads where cultural relativism and universalism conflict, particularly in discussions on human rights and international law. In broader discussions, individual moral relativism, also known as subjectivism, posits that moral judgments are subjective and dependent on individual beliefs. This perspective leads to statements often heard in everyday life, such as, "That's just your opinion," or "Everyone has their own truth." Although this viewpoint can provide a sense of moral autonomy, it suffers from similar critiques as cultural relativism, including self-refutation. If morality is merely a matter of personal opinion, the significance of moral disagreement diminishes, resulting in an environment where meaningful ethical deliberation is nearly impossible. The tolerance paradox presents another intriguing issue for moral relativism. If relativists advocate for tolerance, then they must also tolerate intolerant cultural practices, which raises ethical concerns. How can one condemn practices recognized as morally abhorrent, such as slavery or honor killings, if they are deemed acceptable in certain cultures? The tolerance paradox showcases the inherent difficulties within relativism. Asserting that all cultures deserve tolerance contradicts its foundational premises. Addressing this paradox prompts philosophers to seek out universal moral principles capable of protecting individuals from harmful practices while still honoring cultural diversity. Finally, in a rapidly globalizing world, the challenges posed by moral relativism become even more pronounced. As cultures increasingly intersect and interact, the need for shared ethical values intensifies. Issues like climate change, international trade, and globalization necessitate global cooperation, urging an exploration of universal ethics. In response to these challenges, cosmopolitan ethics has emerged, asserting that humans have responsibilities toward individuals beyond their own cultural confines, advocating for universal principles of justice and human dignity. However, this perspective recognizes the delicate balance required in appreciating local customs and traditions. As our world becomes increasingly interconnected, finding equilibrium between respecting cultural diversity and championing universal human rights becomes a pressing moral challenge. In this lesson, we explored the intriguing concepts surrounding moral relativism and the various arguments for and against it. We examined the key distinctions between descriptive and normative relativism, and how cultural relativism informs our understanding of morality. The discussion extended to the implications of moral relativism on human rights, the tolerance paradox, and the emerging challenges posed by globalization. Throughout, we emphasized the ongoing dialogue between relativism and universalism as we seek to navigate ethical dilemmas in our increasingly interconnected world. Thank you for joining this enlightening discussion on moral relativism. We hope this exploration of ethics has inspired deeper thinking and reflection on your values and beliefs. For more educational content, be sure to subscribe to the Spelling Bee Ninja podcast. Together, let's continue to learn, question, and understand the world around us. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.